Next, we turn to Iran, where widespread protests over water shortages are continuing for an 8th day, and they're growing increasingly violent. A third civilian has now died and 14 police officials have been injured. Well, this was the capital, Tehran, on Tuesday. Protesters have been directing their anger at the regime. These people are shouting death to the Islamic Republic. Prolonged drought and high temperatures have brought on a water crisis. It's devastated agriculture, it's dried up rivers and led to electricity blackouts too. Well, Khuzestan province in the southwest of Iran is at the heart of these protests. It sits on 80% of Iran's oil and 60% of its gas reserves. In other words, it's critical to the country's economy. It also has the densest Arab population, and that's often led to tensions, sometimes violent and sometimes including attempted separatism. But it shouldn't come as a shock to Iran's government that this particular area is offering a challenge. In 2018, the former head of Iran's Environmental Protection Agency said, "We're past the crisis stage. It's a water bankruptcy. Our demand and consumption are way higher than the available water." But he added that the government had been diverting water away from this particular region. It's built dams to divert river water to other provinces where there's a great deal of industry that needs the water. Well, on Wednesday, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, commented on the protests. This is the first time he'd done so publicly, saying officials have a duty to address Kyrgyzstan's problems. Well, this is Ibrahim Raisi. He's due to take office as Iran's new president on the 3rd of August. He's known to be a hardline, ultra-conservative cleric who's close to the supreme leader. And he's known to be tough on political distance too. So this will be an early test for how well he'll respond. This is what he's been saying today.
The problem with Khuzestan is a compounded one. Different problems have merged that are raising concerns for our people. Places like Khuzestan that are special cases need to be given special attention.
Well, in the meantime, there are rumours of internet blackouts to try and curb the protests. And this is from the internet monitoring organisation NetBlocks. It says mobile internet services have been increasingly disrupted since the 15th of July. Well, I'm joined by Dr. Brenda Shaffer, Senior Advisor for Energy at the non-profit research group Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thank you very much for joining us on Outside Source. I'm describing these as protests about water, but are they really about water?
So yeah, I think there's multiple factors. Water may be the trigger, but there's definitely ethnic grievances about discrimination, about really, humiliation of the Ahwazi Arab group within Iran. There's job issues. So it's really hard to separate where ethnicity begins, where environmental and water threats begin, jobs and discrimination. It's really a variety of factors.
And also, to what degree are the protests we're seeing in that one particular region connected to the protests we're seeing elsewhere in Iran?
So that's a really important question. So first thing, the spearhead of these protests, which is the Ahwazi Arab groups, there's two major areas in Iran that they live. One is in the Khuzestan region, which, as you pointed out, is the center of Iran's oil and gas production. The other area is Bandar Abbas, Bushehr region, where also the protests have broken out. So same ethnic group that lives in two different parts of Iran. And also other groups, it seems different labor sources, labor unions have been having ongoing demonstrations. It seems to be taking place, in parallel. And there seems to be some general anti-regime activity, especially in Tehran.
Well, in fact, you mentioned Tehran. We heard a clip there with people chanting that they wanted the end of the Islamic Republic. Normally, if you do that in Iran, you can expect to hear from the authorities, and we have a new leader coming in as well. So I guess this is an early test of his approach to these kind of challenges.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's definitely an early test. I would say that one of the tests will be on Saturday, because the people that reside in the north of Iran, the Azerbaijani Turks, have called for demonstrations. Already the regime has started to join the Ahwazis and to join the other demonstrations. Already the regime has started to try to intimidate people, to arrest them in order to prevent that from taking place. So I think on Saturday we'll have a test. But also I wouldn't be surprised if the regime was pretty smart here, released water, calmed down tensions, and then after Raisi is inaugurated, with his background, start a really thorough crackdown on the people that participated in these protests and demonstrations.
Dr. Shaffer, when you say release water, can you just explain what you mean there? Is this crisis as easily solved as flicking a switch?
Well, this is the aspect where ethnicity and water overlap. So over the past couple of decades, there's been huge water diversion projects. Actually, Khuzestan is a water-rich region, multiple rivers, but diversion of Khuzestan waters to the Persian heartland of Iran. There was even last week a big opening ceremony for, waters in Isfahan. And so these underground tunnels that divert water to different areas. So the government can move the water around. That being said, there is a systemic, shortage of water that just by moving the water around, they can't, they can relieve it in one area but create a problem in another. Same with electricity. The regime underproduces electricity. It's not a matter of just, if you shut down consumption in one place and open in another, they really don't produce enough to meet the people's needs.
Thanks for your help on this. We appreciate it. That's Dr. Shaffer from the Foundation for Defence of Democracies.
Thank you.